Very happy to be here. This is really, really dope. So I figured, this is the 20th anniversary of my brand. I started it in 1997. That's 2 decades of street culture, which is fucking ridiculous. Because I think when I started, there wasn't even a category for this culture, this thing. So I figured I'd start this talk really quickly with a history lesson. And I'm going to go back in time a little bit so that, for you guys who might not have been exposed to this culture for the last 2 decades, you get a little bit of a historical view of where we're sitting and how we got here. So I'm going to do that real quick before we get into other things, and then I think I want to have a Q&A with you guys so that we can have a conversation as well. So what I want to start is with here. This is a line on the screen, okay? And this line, if you can imagine, represents all of time, ever since the universe was made, from the beginning to today. This represents all of Earth's history, all right? So I'm going to start there. Now, that represents 4.5 billion years. This line represents 4.5 billion years, okay? And so I want to show you where street culture is on this line, just to give you some perspective, all right? So this line right here, I carved off. I'm going to do a little bit of a zoom in right now, and this 200,000 years ago is when we as humans stood up off of 4 legs and arms as monkeys or chimpanzees or apes, and we became man 200,000 years ago. So from there to here was like just nothing, and then we finally stood up over here. So I want to zoom in on that blue space right now. This represents the last 200 years, all right? So now I'm going to carve another little dot on the end of that line. That little red line represents 1 AD. All right, so now we're sort of fast forwarding into time. I want to zoom in on that red line now. That's 1 AD. I'm going to carve another little line over there, which represents that yellow. That begins the 1800s, and that's when shit started to get interesting in the 1800s. So I want to zoom in on that now. And a couple of really important things happened. In 1877, Thomas Edison invents recorded music. As you guys might know, Thomas Edison invented a lot of amazing things like the light bulb and the telephone, but he also invented recorded music. And it's a kind of a cool story about how he invented recorded music. He actually was trying to invent the answering machine. If you know the story, he invented the telephone, and he was talking to his partner, and he said, okay, so I invented the telephone, it's really dope, but when someone calls you and you're not at home, how do you know that they called? So he's like, I want to make this device where if I call and you're not home, I can leave my voicemail at your home on this wax platter, right? So he's all excited about this invention. He's like, I invented this thing, it's amazing. And his partner's like, you're so stupid. Like, nobody cares about an answering machine right now. Because back then, the only way you could listen to music was by going to a venue and listening to music live. There was no bring your music with you, no Walkman, no iPod, right? So there's no way to carry music along with you in any way, shape, or form. You had to hear it from the source. He's like, we can put music on this platter, and now we can experience music in different formats and different places, right? Recorded music is huge. And so that's how Thomas Edison accidentally invented recorded music. That is a major part of street culture, the fact that music can be carried along with you wherever you go. The next one, just 1 decade later, Charles Frederick Worth invents fashion. And what does that mean? That doesn't mean that before that we were all walking around naked. We obviously had clothes on our bodies, but nobody put labels in clothes before 1885. Clothes was like toilet paper or like tissues, it was a commodity item that you just used to cover up. Charles Frederick Worth was the first person who put his name on a label and then sewed that label into a garment of clothing, and hence he really invented fashion. So 1875, 1885, let's fast forward a century, 100 years later, and skateboarding is born, okay? And skateboarding, as most of you know, started out in Los Angeles. It was an activity where surfers wanted to practice what they were doing when there wasn't any surf. So they put 4 wheels on a wood board, and then they invented skateboarding. And there was definitely an anti-cultural, sort of anti-the-man movement that came along with skateboarding that started all of this. But I think skateboarding had to have happened because of this phenomenon of recorded music, because of fashion. It all went along with the vibe of skateboarding. And it gets really interesting in the next 3 decades. So 1950 is skateboarding. 10 years later, 1960, punk is born in the United States, in the American Northwest, the Pacific Northwest. Punk music was really interesting because it was the first time that people played music without musical notes. People who didn't previously know how to read music was now making music in their garages, right? So this is another major anti-establishment movement that was happening. A mere 10 years after that, hip-hop is born. Hip-hop is born in Uptown, the Bronx, and Harlem of New York City. If you know the story behind how hip-hop was born, it's really amazing. Basically, it was invented by two turntables. And when a DJ, such as Cool DJ Herc, would be playing at a party, he noticed that when the song went into an instrumental part, so when the rapper would stop rapping and it would just go into the beat, that's when the dancers were really having a good time. So he had thought of an idea. If I could keep extending this breakbeat part, where it just keeps being the instrumental, I'll have people constantly dancing, right? So he made this quasi-invention where he hooked up two turntables together, and he said, all right, once this beat is done, I'm going to restart the beat again with this next one and just keep going back and forth. And that sort of mixing and scratching is really how hip-hop was born. And I think it's really interesting and dope that skateboarding, punk music, and hip-hop were all born within this very relatively short period of time in the grand scale of human Earth history. All right, and then today, I had the month wrong. So let's break this down. So the birth of skateboarding looked like this, right? And I want to go into a little bit of progression of how this happened now. This is the birth of skateboarding, right? But then skateboarding grew. It grew into this big thing, and this is what skateboarding looks like today. It's the current state of skateboarding. And then you have skateboarding commodified, right? So it started as this really granular, organic thing, and now it's turned into like this big, big business. And let's look at the birth of punk as well. The punk obviously had this very, very granular, organic growth too, but then we start seeing sellout stadiums, right? And then you see something like John Varvatos taking over the CBGB store and doing a collaboration, with Chrysler that's inspired by punk music. So it's, again, something that's being commodified and commercialized. And then hip-hop. This is that classic scene in the park where hip-hop was born. And then, of course, the current state of hip-hop looks like this. It's quite different, right? It's evolved somewhat. And then, of course, now hip-hop commodified. You can't really do a hip-hop shoot without private planes and models half naked in a plane, So I think it's really interesting how these different things, music, fashion, skateboarding, rock and roll, hip-hop, I went through this human Earth history because this, where we're at right now, Seoul DXB, which is really the Middle Eastern epicenter for street culture, is all of these things added together. If street culture was like a stew, these are all the ingredients to that stew. The thing that's different about street culture that I love over everything else that I mentioned, skateboarding, hip-hop, and punk, is that the people who pioneered street culture were a little bit different. They weren't sponsored athletes, right? So a lot of times in sports and basketball, the basketball player or the skateboarder was the focus of a brand. They weren't outside spectators that were enamored by culture. So John Varvatos, for example, wasn't a punk rock artist, but he was enamored by the culture and he created a business off of that. That's not the case with street culture. Everyone that you see who has a business here, they live and breathe this shit. We're not fans, we're actually living the culture. And they weren't rock star pop musicians that were paid to rep a brand. So again, everyone that you see here, me, myself, I'm not like a musician that someone's just giving a check to start a brand. All of these people put their life on the line to start a brand like that. So that's another reason why I love what these people do. They're artists, they're designers, they're creatives that live and breathe this culture, and they're individuals that dedicate their life to this culture. And that's why I think this is so unique and so much more special than everything that has come before it. I often say that street culture to me is much more powerful than everything else that has preceded it. And my culture is born from this. I'm born from this as well. So I thought a little history lesson would be good. My name is JeffStaple. These are the companies that I founded. I have a clothing line called Staple Pigeon. I have a creative agency called Staple Design, and I have a store called Reed Space. I am of Chinese descent. I was born in America to immigrant parents who definitely did not believe or support what it is that I was trying to do for many, many years. As I said, this is my 20th anniversary, and I would say only in the last 5 years at most have my parents accepted what it is that I do. I see a lot of Asian faces, and Asian parents are like, you better be a doctor or a lawyer, like otherwise you're a complete failure in my life, you know, like. And I went to art school, which was a no-no in an Asian household, you know. I dropped out of art school, which is a double no-no, you know. But they're coming around, they're starting to understand. And I want to show you a very quick video now. It's a 5-minute video that when I showed this to my parents, after they saw the video, they started to understand what it is that I do. And I think that oftentimes creatives have their head so deep into what it is that they do that it's hard for them to look up and explain to somebody else what it is that they're passionate about, what it is that they do. So as I mentioned in the video, you know, I don't want to go take too much time for this because I want to have a conversation with you guys, but obviously the clothing collection is one of the biggest components of what it is that we do. It started out with me just hand silk screening t-shirts at Parsons, and then now it's grown into a full collection, menswear, outerwear, bottoms, tops. We have over 1,500 points of distribution all over the globe now. We need more points of distribution in Dubai. So I'm working on it. But yeah, it's really dope to see how the line has grown, you know. Of course, amazing collaborations that I'll get into as well. And we don't make women's wear, but women seem to really love our clothing. So, you know, maybe one day we'll make a women's collection. And these are all shoots that we do to promote our line as well. So I just wanted to run through some of these just so you could see where the line has gone and how it's progressed. It's really something that I'm really proud of. And then Reed Space we talked about as well. So Reed Space recently closed in our original LES location in New York City. There's plans to reopen it in spring of 2018 now. But what we created at Reed Space was really an amazing like melting pot of sort of like ideas, you know. It's like if you cut my head open and gave me a lobotomy, everything that inspired me, whether it was like stationary items, gadgets, books, magazines, obscure mixtapes, art, sneakers, clothes, I just wanted everything in there. It wasn't a staple store. It was like a store that just supported many different brands and activations and events, you know, and obviously product as well. But it was really more of a community space than it was a store. And these are some images from the OG Reed Space that eventually evolved into even a deal with PacSun, which is a mall retailer in America that has over 1,400 points of distribution. And so we were building Reed Spaces inside of malls all across America too, which was probably one of the things that I'm most proud of, that this thing that I named after my deceased high school art teacher, that I opened one 800 square foot location in New York City, then sort of, you know, spread out all across America. It was something that I was really, really proud of. And then I do these talks as well. It's very meta. I'm like on a stage and there's like a picture of a stage. So I do these talks as well, just trying to spread the message and like let the younger generation learn from what it is that took me fucking 20 years to do. Hopefully it takes you like 2 years to do, you know? Like I'm trying to speed up the process here. For the next generation. I also do a one-to-one video series where I interview lots of different individuals in all different mediums and formats and styles and crafts, just to understand where this idea of like creating for yourself comes from, you know. I'm also starting, I haven't announced this yet publicly, but I'm starting a podcast with Hypebeast called The Business of Hype, where I start talking about yes, now I've inspired you and we've inspired you to go up and follow your dreams and do your thing. What's next? How do you open a business account? How do you get legal rights? How do you get copyright trademarks, right? What happens if someone sues you? What happens if your shit gets seized in customs, right? So like the business of hype is gonna hopefully inspire creatives to like learn the next steps, you know, because I think that's where we're sort of leaving them right now. And then what is the next one? So, did this go off? Okay. So we do a lot of nonprofit work as well, a lot of donating. This is with Art Start. We do projects that we donate all the proceeds to a collaboration. I think it's very important to give back. And Skillshare is also a huge thing that I've been doing recently. It's an online university. I used to teach a lot at traditional schools like NYU, Parsons, but Skillshare is like an online college that is like changing the game, and I've been doing a lot of classes on there, so definitely check out Skillshare Staple if you get a chance. Staple Design Studio is our creative agency, and I apologize for just rifling through this. All this shit you can Google and find online. I'm just telling you this right now. So we've worked with a lot of different brands. I think this is one thing that I'm really proud of as well. The ability to be able to touch all of these different brands who sometimes have no clue what the hell they're doing and just trying to navigate them through this world, you know? And obviously one of the most prolific things that we've done is this project with Nike called the Pigeon, which recently we revisited. This shoe has become sort of like a quasi-grail in the world of sneaker culture, and then we recently revisited that with the black version of this, which is what I'm wearing on my feet. We have 20 pairs that we're raffling that we saved just for Soul DXB. We have 20 pairs that we're going to be raffling off for free over at our booth, so definitely come by and check it out. But this was a really incredible moment to be able to sort of bring back that energy that I feel like sneaker culture might have been missing, you know? And to be able to work with a brand like Nike on this has been really dope. So before we get into the Q&A, I know we're running out of time, I did want to just talk about one last thing. It's this concept of art and science. Art and science is what I use as code for what we do here is all art, right? We make stuff, we want to create, we want to do amazing things, that's art. The science side is the math side, and I thought Dubai and the Middle East was a really perfect sort of melting point between art and science, because what we do at Soul DXB is art, but you go out to like the malls and you go out to like the corporate centers, that's a science. And you have to somehow make these two things balance, because one needs the other one in an odd sense, you know? And I think we want the science people, AKA the money people, to understand what the art people do, you know? So without art, right, this is what you have. This is just a plain shoe. This is a white Air Force One that you can cop pretty easily, right? But look at this shoe now. This shoe is also a white Air Force One, but it's slightly different. And it's the slight difference in this shoe is the art. That's what makes this so special. And I think it's pretty cool that the guy who made this shoe is sitting in the back corner right now. Hiroshi Fujiwara, everyone give a big round of applause to Hiroshi. So you talk to a banker or you talk to an investment guy and you're like, yeah, this one's $60. This one's $6,000. They're like, why? I don't get it. You know, that's the difference between art and science. I'll give you another example. You could get a pair of socks, a pack of socks like this for $5. But these socks cost $30 each. Why? Just, they're like the same, you know, but like these socks by Stance have this elevated feeling, you know, and it's really, it's knitted cotton with an embroidery on it. We're not talking about cost of goods sold. We're talking about what the designers and the innovators put into it that makes it that art project that's not science, you know. Here's a white tee. You could get an unlimited amount of these white tees for $5. Here's another white tee. But somehow this white tee goes for $100 each. And they're both Hanes t-shirts. And this one has this on it. But that little thing is the art. That's what makes this different. You know, here's a plain pocket tee. Here's one with a pigeon on it. That's the art versus the science. I want people to understand that it's not just about throwing a logo on a thing. It's what that logo represents. You know, that's really what makes the difference. Here's a military camouflage backpack that you could get for $5. Now it's got a white label on it and it costs $90. Now it's got pigeon shit behind it. Now it's $200. You know, so it's just art on art on art. So what I call this generation is flag bearers, right? People like flag bearers, like people who hold flags. Flags are like logos, you know, like that's why I call it flag bearing. But that logo represents so much, whether it's a pigeon or a bee or two lightning bolts. It just means so much. And to me, it's like, forget about the blogs, forget about collabs, forget about marketing, forget about influencers and social media. It's not about that. If you break it down to its real roots, it's all about the art. That's what it is. That's why we do what it is. That's why we do what we do. But art alone cannot do what everyone outside of Soul DXB wants, right? So if you go outside of Soul DXB, you go into downtown Dubai, you go into New York, you go into Paris, people don't want just art. They want the money. They want the science as well. But I think once those two worlds come together, that's when we can make a viable business, art and science added together, you know? So science alone can't give you science alone can give you just a business, but art and science together can make something really, really magical. That's what I hope everyone here can take away from this talk. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. I have some time. If you want to do some Q&A, if you guys have any questions, feel free. Yes, we have a question right here. Yes.
When you just like graduated out of the college, like when you just like came out of the college, choose to get out of the college, what was that one thing which kept you kicking into like keep believing in yourself, creating and striving for something which was art and which can be scalable as well? Were you trying to build up something which could be scalable later, or were you trying to be an innovator and like you had like passion in your own art?
Yeah.
So what, were you thinking from the consumerism point of view, or were you thinking
No, I wasn't.
as an artsy person?
Right. So let me make sure everyone can hear. So he asked, after I got out of college, how was it that I kept going and making the things, and what kept me driving to do that, right? I get asked that question a lot by young people, is like, how have you able to sustain for like the last 20 years? To me, if you're in this and you're not enjoying what it is that you're doing, you should quit right now, because you won't have the stamina to work hard enough. There's no way that you could work hard enough to like sustain all of these years and all of these struggles. The only way you could do it is if you fucking love the shit out of this. You know, like people think I'm a workaholic, but I'm not a workaholic. Like, I'm not on a beach in a hammock here sipping a martini. I'd rather be doing this stuff that I just showed you, but I'd rather do that over anything else, you know? So to me, it's not about work, it's about like passion, you know? That's the God honest truth. So that's the only way you're gonna be able to do it, is if you just, I tell you, even if like they were like, we're not gonna pay you to do this, like I would still do it because this is just what I love to do, you know?
When you were creating stuff early, like during the early years, were you conscious about like plagiarism and all these things, or were you like just giving it your best shot?
Plagiarism?
Yeah.
No, I don't care about plagiarism. Like, if, you know, imitation is the highest form of flattery, they say, right? So if people are biting my shit, which they do, I find that as like one of the highest forms of like compliments. It's my job as a creator to always be 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of that, so that they always have new shit to bite. That's like my job, is to give them new shit to copy. Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
You were talking about being open to coming to Dubai and bringing your awareness to Dubai. Would you be open to collaborating with a local brand?
I would be. So I'll tell you how I handle collaborations. It might look like I do like a lot of collabs, but actually the collaborations that come out of Staple are super organic. Like all the that collaboration that I did with Nike on the Black Pigeon, that happened over a brunch. And if that brunch didn't happen, like if I didn't break bread with that person, that collaboration wouldn't have happened, you know? So all of the collabs that we do happen very, very organically and intimately. I think it's funny when people say like, yo, you collaborated with Nike or you collaborated with like Beats by Dre. That's actually a misnomer. You're not actually collaborating with a company, right? Like Nike has 45,000 employees. All 45,000 employees don't say, we should be collaborating with Staple. There's probably 5 people in the company that are like, we should be collaborating. There's probably 100 people that are saying like, we shouldn't be collaborating with them. And so now it's a fight to try to get this product through. If those 5 guys leave Nike and go to Reebok, guess what? I'm probably doing a collab with Reebok. You know, like, so you're not actually collaborating with this whole publicly traded company. You're collaborating with individual people. So to me, collabs are very intimate in that way. That's why I want to be able to see the people and meet the people that I'm actually working with face to face. I don't do collabs via like a PowerPoint presentation and just emailing them back and forth. You know, it really happens quite in person. So to that I say I don't turn down collabs, but I also don't say yes to collabs just on the strength, you know. Word. Any other questions? Yes. How do I what? Oh, how do I stay relevant? I don't know, you tell me. No, the thing is like being relevant is not something that I can put on a things to do list. Like I can't wake up and be like, stay relevant, do laundry, pick up milk. Like I can't decide that. That's like for everyone here to decide. I just gotta do the shit that I wanna do. And hopefully, fingers crossed and knock on wood, a couple people are like, yo, that's still dope what he does, and it's still relevant. But unfortunately, I can't like put a quarter in a machine and like buy relevancy, you know? I'd be buying that shit all day. Yes?
You said that the Black Pigeon was a kind of nod to what the sneaker industry used to be.
Yeah.
What do you think yourself is missing now, or that you might miss
Yeah.
from sort of 2005 and previous that we don't necessarily maybe have now?
I think the biggest thing that's missing is the community aspect of what sneaker culture started out as, you know. Obviously, this happened to me because of a coupling of like social media, where everything happens on Instagram and online, and how purchasing has also moved on to online, right? And so in order to catch up with that, the brands, you guys know the Confirmed app from Adidas, the sneakers app from Nike, right? And then Stadium Goods and Flight Club, and then hiring a bot to like help you buy the shit. It's all become very, very mechanical. In that mechanics, what gets lost is talking to your mans who's standing next to you like, yo, what you got? Where'd you get those? I got those at Modell's on like sale. I'm like, whoa, that's dope. That's all gone because now you're sitting in your underwear in your bedroom just like fighting these like robots and like retweeting this and like showing that, so there's no culture in that, you know what I mean? So that whole thing is lost. So when we dropped the Black Pigeon, like I said in the video, we recreated ReadSpace 4 days before the global launch, and over 800 people came out on the morning of. And for the most part, it was all peace. But what was dope about it was just everyone was saying like this was the energy that we had been lacking for so many years in sneaker culture. And festivals like this, like Complex Con, like Maze Fest in Brazil that I was at last week, these are a way that we're trying to recreate that culture in a way, because we realize that like we're not going to stop e-commerce, we're not going to stop social media, right? But if we can start gathering people again and having these talks and having this sort of discussion, this is a way to replace that sort of culture that's missing. Yeah, but I hope more of this happens. I think we really need to get together. Thank you. All right. Okay, I think I got my warning. I gotta go. But thank you very much. It's been great. I'll be at the Staple booth the whole time, so if you want, come by and say hello. And again, we're raffling off 20 pairs of these. So good luck.